Hi guys, what's up? It's Alex here, and today we're going to be giving you a preview of the Monaco Grand Prix in 2013. Now the footage in the background is actually some go-karting footage, but I decided to use my chest mount for my GoPro, and I'd really sort of like to know what you prefer. Do you prefer this, or do you prefer the head mount that goes on the helmet? I'm not really too sure. Personally, I think when we get into the faster laps, this is just a little bit too bumpy. The camera shakes about quite a bit, but you know, overall I think it's quite interesting to look at it from a different point of view. But let me know in the comment section, and yeah, let's get into a preview of this year's Monaco Grand Prix. So the Spanish Grand Prix wasn't as exciting as most people expected it to be. It more was about tyre preservation and pit stops than anything else. Lots and lots of pit stops. I think we had around 90 pit stops in this Grand Prix, and obviously some cars retired, so we'd probably have even more of everyone finished. But really it was a lot about tyres, and the thing is, there was so much about tyres that Pirelli actually changed I think it's the structure of the tyres for Canada. So we're going to have a similar sort of race, I think, in Monaco, where tyre preservation is key, and the teams that are good on their tyres will come to the top. But the teams that really aren't so good on their tyres might be just as good here, because if they can get a good lap in qualifying, they might be able to hold off everyone through the race. So it's just going to be a time thing that we'll see through time what will happen with that. But yeah, it's a bit disappointing, I think. I mean, a lot of people are saying that it was really bad for Pirelli to, go into the season with these tyres. I personally think that it wasn't as bad as people made it out to be. If we look at it, the 2 years before it, there was 4 stops as well, I think, that won the race. So it might be just the Spanish track. It might be just highlighting the teams that really are hard on their tyres, that are really bad at that track. So, Red Bull, Mercedes, they obviously were the two main teams that were complaining, and I think they got their wishes for Canada, but it might just have been that track that really highlighted their weaknesses. But we'll see. But yeah, Monaco, we finally get onto Monaco. Let's go and have a look at what happened last year before we get into anything about this year. Now, last year's Monaco Grand Prix for Michael Schumacher fans was probably one of the most exciting moments since his comeback, and that was because he got provisional pole position, but then obviously he had, I think it was a 5-place penalty for when he hit Bruno Senna off the road in the race before last year. But Mark Webber ended up getting the pole position last year, but Michael Schumacher was the man in qualifying who got the fastest lap round Monaco. Now, I think that's a key thing to think about this year, because Mercedes have been ultra fast in qualifying, and I think they were worse last year. So this could be a track where we see Mercedes be able to get a win. This is a bit of a risky thing to say, but I think it's the most likely place that Mercedes will get a win this year, because as the tyres and everything change and the season goes on, I think Mercedes will start to fade away a little bit, as their development never seems to be quite as good as the top 3 teams, McLaren, Ferrari and Red Bull. It never seems to be quite there, and even Lotus, is in the top 4, maybe it's the top 4 that seem to have a good amount of progression through the year. But Mercedes never really have had the great progression since they came into the sport in 2010, and I think this probably is their best chance at winning a race. Nico Rosberg was second last year. I think Hamilton ended up about 4th or 5th last year in the McLaren, and really it was just about last year. It was about sitting behind Mark Webber as he won the race. But Mark Webber drove a great race, an immaculate race. Nobody could get past him, so he never put a foot wrong. And this is probably one of Mark Webber's best tracks, and I think this might be the race that gets his season back on track. Obviously he's not had the greatest start to the season. His best result is 2nd place in Malaysia, and I kind of think that he'd really have liked to win that race, obviously, as we've heard in many interviews since. But overall, apart from that, he hasn't had the greatest of the season. I hope he gets on the podium in this race, and I hope that he outperforms Vettel, just because he has had such an unlucky start to the season, and it would be good to see him being the faster of the Red Bull drivers here in Monaco, as it has been one of his most successful tracks in Formula 1. He's got two wins around here, and I think he's also got 2 wins at Great Britain, so 2 of his favourite tracks coming up very soon. So we'll see how he does there, and the Red Bull car will no doubt be quite fast. Talking about Red Bull, let's just do a quick mini summary of how they might do here in Monaco. I think they'll be on the pace, but I not sure if they will get the race win at the end of the day. I think if Mark Webber can do it, he'll probably be the one that can get the win. Sebastian Vettel has never really been at home around here. He's never had his really greatest results around here. He's obviously had a win, but I never thought that he's really at home here. He's never really felt like this is his best track. But you know, one of the Red Bull drivers very, easily could get this win, depending on the circumstances in the race. Obviously, a lot of safety cars will probably be throughout this race because, it's quite a little twisty track, so wouldn't be surprised whatsoever to see a safety car come out a couple of times. I mean, the safety car hasn't been out at all in 2013, which is good, but I think this might be the track we might see a safety car, but we'll see. But yeah, Red Bull, they've got a good chance at the win, but we don't really know what their development has been like in the last 2 weeks. I'm not really too sure. They weren't really on the pace at the last round due to degradation of tyres, but we'll see. I'm looking forward to seeing how Red Bull will do, because I don't think they come into this weekend as the winner's favourite. Now let's talk about Ferrari. They come off Spain with a win, so obviously they're going to be very happy with that. They'll be very thoughtful of their chances here in Monaco. I think last year Fernando Alonso finished third. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think he finished third, and I think he had good race pace. That's one of the races where the Ferrari was pretty much the similar pace to the Red Bull and also the Mercedes, the McLaren, but he just didn't really be able to get past the cars in front of him. Obviously, last year it was a bit of a procession. It's never really nice to see that around Monaco, but you've got to really expect it, as it is such a little twisty track. It's hard to get past people. But I do think Ferrari come here with a good shot at the win, especially with Fernando Alonso. He's been on good form this year. He's pretty much either won or ended up having some sort of failure, and either with him crashing into somebody or with the car, and that's pretty much it. He's had a pretty good year, you've got to be honest. He's catching up slowly to Raikkonen and Vettel in the championship, but Raikkonen is really showing his worth this year, but I'll get onto that in a minute. Ferrari come in with a good shot at the win. I'm not sure whether they will. It's really going to be about who's on pole position, but it'll be good to see a Ferrari compared to Red Bull in this race. So next up we will talk about Lotus. They've had a really good start to the season. Sadly for the last race, Grosjean didn't have any points the first time this year. He didn't score any points, and that was a bit disappointing for the team. But overall, Kimi Raikkonen is pretty much on fire. He got the second position in Spain, and he was looking like at some points that he could have won that race, but the three-stop strategy didn't really work out for him at the end of the day. And yeah, it was an interesting race for Kimi Raikkonen. I'm not sure he really went into that race expecting he'd be on the podium, but he had great race pace, and he did a really good job. And I think that Lotus will be up here in Monaco. They were alright last year. It wasn't their finest hour last year, but Grosjean was quite fast in qualifying, and Raikkonen just didn't have the race pace, I don't think, last year. But the cars evolved from last year. The car's a lot faster at this stage of the season than it was last year, so I'd expect to see Lotus up there fighting with Ferrari and Red Bull for the win, as well as Mercedes. And it's going to be interesting to see how Lotus fare, and I think they do have a good shot at the win. And I've realised that I've said a lot of people have had a good shot at the win here, but that is just the circumstance we are in. There are 4 teams, I think, that can go for the win here in Monaco, and that's 8 drivers that have got a good shot at the win as well. Most of them have ended up on the podium at Monaco, and that shows how good some of these drivers at the front are. Next up, Mercedes. As I said earlier on in this video, this is their best chance, in my opinion, to win a race this year. They will most likely be on the front row in qualifying. I'm not going to say they will be, but they will most likely be on the front row, as they have been for the last 3 events. And I think Lewis Hamilton is a pretty good driver around here in Monaco. Obviously, he's won round here in the past already, so we know he's good. Rosberg's had some good performances, most notably last year, in my opinion, coming home 2nd place behind Mark Webber. He really sort of outperformed Schumacher on race day, but not so in qualifying. So I think we might see Hamilton on pole with Rosberg 2nd if the Mercedes is as fast as we've seen it in previous races this year. But yeah, it's looking quite good for Mercedes if they can hold off everyone through the race. Next up, Force India. They've had a pretty unlucky start of the season. I think they should have scored probably about twice as many points as they have already, because Adrian Sutil, out of the races so far, has pretty much had a failure or been crashed into in all of them so far, except from the first race in Australia where he led. So we know Sutil's fast. Spain, he was closing in on the points, but he just didn't have the pace near the end of the race to do it after obviously a big pit stop which cost him about 40 seconds. De Resta, most notably for me, is one of the drivers of the season so far. He's always up there in the top 7 or 8 of the races, which is really, really good for him. Obviously good for the British fans. He's been the top British driver in the last couple of races, which is really good to see. Great to see Paul De Resta on his best form of his career, I think, in my opinion, in Formula 1. And it's good to see him performing so well. Force India, they might be thinking to themselves they could get a top 5 finish here if they do well. Sutil's always run typically quite well here in Monaco, so we'll see what happens to him. If he doesn't have another pit stop error or gets crashed into, I think this might be a good race for Sutil to get his season back on track. Next up, McLaren. They've had a pretty up and down start to the year, pretty disappointing in general, and I mean, Button had a pretty good strategy call in the last race in Spain, but I don't think he got as many points as expected. Perez has shown he's fast in Bahrain, but just overall hasn't kept the consistency up, and McLaren really just going to be scrabbling to try and get points here in Monaco. But if they play a strategy right, they probably can get a good strategy call and obviously get into the points. Toro Rosso outperforming Sauber and Williams this year. Great to see. I mean, I personally do like both Jean-Eric Vergne and Daniel Ricciardo. Both of them very fast drivers, and I think both of them will be deserving of a Red Bull seat near in their, or sometime in their near future. I think Vergne last year was running in 6th position until the team played a bit of a stupid strategy call and put him on the intermediate tyres on the end of the race, I think it was, because they thought there was going to rain. I don't think it did end up raining, and then I think he plummeted all the way to like 13th, 14th, so that was a disappointing time for Jean-Eric Vergne. I think one of these drivers will be up there in the points, maybe even higher up in the points than we expect. It'd be good to see how they do this year around Monaco, because obviously they don't really need the downforce here in Monaco, as it's really just slow corners, and it might be the race where Toro Rosso gets up amongst the big drivers and big teams. Next up, Sauber. They've had a pretty unlucky start to the season once again, as with Williams. Both of them so close to scoring points in some of the races so far. Both Maldonado, Bottas, and also Gutierrez, so not both, all of them, all three of them have scored 11th place as their best finish, which must be a bit annoying. Hulkenberg scored points in, I think it was it in Australia he scored? No, it wasn't Australia he scored points, it was Malaysia he scored some points, Hulkenberg. Apart from that, I don't think Hulkenberg scored, and I think both Sauber and Williams will be thinking about the strategy. If they see rain on the horizons, they'll be like, this is the time to shine. This might be the only chance we get of more points here in 2013, so they might maybe sort of rush into a decision and maybe put on some intermediate tyres if it's looking like it's going to rain like Vergne did last year. That might be their only chance of some points this year for Williams if their car doesn't improve, and I hope it does improve, but I hope both Gutierrez's cars, Gutierrez and Hulkenberg's car, sorry, and also Maldonado's and Bottas's car, I hope all their cars improve throughout the year, but that the lower teams down the grid don't have the mega resources that the big sort of 4 or 5 teams do. Next up, Marussia. They've been looking pretty strong this year. This might be their chance to get nearer to the points. I think this was last year a good race for the back teams, obviously, as it's such a slow circuit. You don't need the downforce, as I said earlier on with Toro Rosso. And I think this could be a good race for Marussia and Caterham. Hopefully they can get near their points. Hopefully they might be able to beat Sauber and Williams. I'm a big fan of Williams, so obviously I don't want them to beat them. I hope Williams get loads of points, but yeah, hopefully Marussia and Caterham are closing up to the midfield, and hopefully they got a good shot at some, maybe even some points here in Monaco if it all goes a bit crazy. If there's a lot of retirements, who knows what can happen here in Monaco. But definitely it's looking interesting about what these teams will do. Hopefully they'll play a bit of a different strategy call to maybe put themselves in a good position to get some points, maybe if they've got the right position, but I don't really know. It's going to be an interesting race here, guys. Definitely in the comment section leave your sort of opinions on who you think is going to do well here, maybe not so well. I'm really looking sort of into it and seeing how you guys think about this race, because obviously the last couple of years it's pretty much been a Red Bull track, but yeah, with only 4 points separating Vettel and Raikkonen in the championship, it's going to be interesting. It looks like once again it's going to be between Vettel, Raikkonen and Alonso for the championship. I also think Massa will be up there about 4th as well, fighting I think with Webber for 4th in the championship. But I think it is between those three once again, Vettel, Raikkonen and Alonso for the championship. It's going to be exciting to see how they fare around here in Monaco. And also good to see how Force India do, and also Mercedes, whether they can, you know, push their way in and maybe get a win or a podium if they're lucky throughout the race. Definitely looking forward to see how Toro Rosso do throughout this race, because they got a good shot at probably getting some points here, and hoping that the Williams team gets some points as well. That's obviously my favourite team, along with Force India on the grid. So hoping Force India and Williams have a good race here in Monaco. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I think I've already said that. Yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. In the description I'm going to leave a link to my Twitter account. You can follow that if you want to. We've got over 1,000 followers on there now, which is awesome, and I must say thank you for that. And yeah, so we're getting near the end of this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this go-karting footage in the background, whether you like the chest mount or the head camera more. And yeah, so thank you for watching. It's been Alex, and I'm out of here. Goodbye.